Am I audible? Can I start? Can I start, sir?
Yes, please. Dr. Jolie.
Okay. Just to reiterate, in case you cannot hear me or in case my video is lagging, you can just notify me.
Yes, please.
Thank you for having me in this international virtual conference, Role of Science and Agriculture towards global food security and rural development. It's a splendid initiative from Sri Krishna University, Madhya Pradesh. Congratulations. Honorary Dr. Ashwani Kumar Dubey and distinguished researchers, scientists, and all portfolio holders, a very good afternoon. And first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Dubey for making me a part of this conference as a role speaker. Now, let me come to the topic. Africa as a whole is regarded as a wealth of flora and fauna. And Kenya is an intense part of that. It's so enchanting to see the beautiful flora and fauna embracing the region, the exclusive flora inundating the region instigated me actually to take this initiative and do my research over here. However, as a botanist, I only focused on the floral sect of the region. Well, we all know that the beauty and intensity of African forest, it is laden with exclusive green exotic flora, and the community which is residing around these forests, they possess ethnic cultural values. So today I'm going to speak about how these forests play a role model to aid the needy community and provide them with a sustainable livelihood. So let me begin my presentation. And that's what I decided on the topic of my presentation for today as a sacred forest as refugio of food sources in Kenya. So I've just started my presentation with a picture, so that you guys just have a look on how the Kaya forest looks. And I'll just discuss why we call them as Kaya forest, because like we have all heard, mostly it's a forest, but why do we call them as Kaya forest? There's a reason why we call them as Kaya forest. So let me just take you to the historical background of Kaya, why we call them as Kaya. So basically, these forests are situated in the coast of eastern Kenya towards the Kilifi, Kwale, and Mombasa County. If you come to Kenya, particularly over here, it's a coastal region, and these forests, they extend in a belt. Now, these kayas, they are actually residual patches, and they have a certain area, mostly from 100 to 200 hectares of land. And the concept of this kaya, it was long back. It started around the 16th century. And by the end of 1940, around the end 20th century, the concept of kaya forest, it got over. So the literal meaning of kaya is a home to the community over here, whom we call them as Mijikenda communities. So initially what happened in the history, these people, to hide from their enemies or to protect themselves, they used to go and seek shelter in the forest. And kaya meant home. That's what we started calling this forest as Kaya forest. So this is just a picture of a Kaya sacred forest. You can see how dense and how exotic the vegetation over here. It's actually so dense that you can't walk in through the forest. You literally have to crawl. So when I was doing my research, literally I had to crawl between the trees to lay the quadrants, apart from the community which they usually reside around these forests. Now, these kaya forests, they are regarded as cultural sites over here, and they have a lot of biodiversity. Different types of species we find flourishing nicely over here, and these forests are taken as a national heritage site, and they are protected from the national museums of Kenya. Now, for me, there are almost 9 sacred kaya forests over here. My work was basically on 2 kaya forests, which we call as Kaya Kauma and Kaya Solokero. Now, each kaya forest is adjoined with they have their own community dwelling in the villages around the kaya forest. And they have their typical livelihood pattern, they have their typical culture. So here for the Kaya Kauma, it is mostly prevalent by the Kauma community. And for Kaya Solokero, it is inhabited by the Jibana community. Now, Kaya Kauma has been taken as a cultural World Heritage Site from the United Nations of Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization. In fact, they have also declared some of the kaya as a World Heritage Site, of which Kaya Kauma is one of them. And in fact, Kaya Kauma is also called as a primary kaya because of the area it covers. It's almost 210 hectares in land compared to the secondary kaya forest, which are a bit smaller. Okay, so let's proceed. This is just an identification in front of the Kauma forest, Kaya Kauma, declared from the UNESCO as the World Heritage Site here. And actually, in fact, when I did my walk here, we need to seek permission also from the community who are taking care of the Kaya forest, because any trespassers or anyone cannot go. It's their cultural site, and they have their beliefs associated with these type of forests. So communities are very linked to these forests. Now, this is a map which shows all the 9 Kaya forests. And I just marked my workplace for Kaya Kauma and Kaya Solokero. But there are other forests also all across the coast of Kenya spreading here. Now, just have a look on the cultural houses in these sacred village. They have a typical pattern, the way they built. Usually they take the hay or the banana leaves and they knit it in a pattern which is very, very traditional. In the town, we'll not get to see these type of these huts which are there in the sacred village. So I just thought I'll put a picture here so that it can just be seen. And they are actually in the center of the Kaya forest. So we need to go like almost probably 3 to 5 kilometers. And in the center, they have these huts and they have their rituals over there. They also have a graveyard and they have other ritualistic ceremony, which they believe. They do in the center in the Kaya village. So these huts there, they say that they are the Kaya villages which are inside the Kaya forest. This is just the traditional food which the people over here and majorly in the Kaya forest people are, but they're more dependent on the food plants which are mostly occurring inside this forest or in the area around. Well, I can just name a couple of food. Well, it's a Swahili name, which they say over here. It's an authentic name like Hogali. They make it from the maize flour or the githeri. It's like It's a mixed vegetables. Then we also have cassava. It's the they make either they it's a very popular fruit over here. So they make in a traditional way. There's a curry which they make. So just I took picture of some of the traditional foods. Okay, now let us come on the problem on this statement. Why the research we want? Why this work was done, and what else has to be done here? So now the problem is this: there is a threat to the indigenous knowledge on the food plant around the Kaya villages, which the community withholds with it. Now, the problem here, what I felt when I went and when I dealt with the communities, with the people around there, is that the older generation, they were very well informed, but the younger generation were not that much interested towards, towards their culture because there is no platform of communication. I think this problem is not only in Kenya. I think this problem should relate to everywhere, to India, to all the parts of the rich culture. We always say it is very digitalized now, so younger generations are not interested in inheriting their culture from their older generations. So I think this type of work, I think we should always have everywhere, so that at least it is documented and that knowledge doesn't fade away. Because it is like here, it is not incorporated even with the Western education, and there is no knowledge being taught even in the schools. They do not know. There is no publication of these knowledge because some they have their beliefs and values also, so they do not want to share uh, like all these problems. And I think this will be everywhere. It's not here, it will be everywhere globally. Every rural areas, every community is very rich. It has to be a transmission of the knowledge there. So, so now basically coming to the food plants, because for me, I did a research on every sector of plant. It was not only food, because our platform is like that. I'm only bringing the food plants into consideration here. So they depend, now here in the Kaya community, they are dependent majorly on every resources from the plants for their livelihood. Now, the approaches which I had to do to finish my research was 4 types of approaches. It was on a household level, whereby I had to find out which plant they use for their livelihood, which flora they are mostly using. And then even on the household level, you see here they say as a medicine man or the herbalist. Mostly those people are dealing with the medicinal sector of the plants because they don't go to a doctor or anywhere. They're just doing all the practices just in the village. So apart from the food plants, for the herbalist, I had to go for the medicinal plants, specifically to interview them. And for the local communities, I seeked information on every sector of plant. But the food, I will just show you which type of food they use and how they are using it. Now, this was the community survey. Apart from the community survey, I also went inside the Kaya forest and to do some quadrant and transect study of there, then to document the food plants. Here I'll be showing you the food plants, but all the plants I have documented, and it has never been done. And I would also I would request people if they can come forward, and every region, anywhere in the world, we need to explore. We need to explore our rural communities because they are not literate that much that they would come up and they would come up with their intense knowledge what they have. So this was my second approach. Now, for the third one, what I did, I had to ascertain the ethnobotanical and the sustainability of the plants, what they had mentioned. So the food plants or the medicine, but here I'll be discussing only on the food plants, but I had categorized them into food, medicine, construction, firewood species, decorative, beekeeping, any belief plants, because here people have a lot of beliefs with their cultures. So the belief plants, there were so many categories of plant. And then I had to validate it. I had to validate it with the local medicinal formulation. which the medicine men they had suggested me with the matching literature, and also did the analysis on the food plants if it is also used as any sort of medicine. So let me give just, this is pictures of some Kaya elders who are the custodians of these forests. This one is, we call Muse as elders here. Muse means as a sir, as you refer them with greetings. So is Muse Ndale Wanje. He's the head, the custodian, one of the custodian of Kaya Solokero. And this Muse, Ndale Wanje, he's from Kaya Kauma, but I was very fortunate to meet him because after my research, he passed away. So these are the Kaya elders, and it's not only one people, it's a community of Kaya elders who are the custodians of these Kaya forest, and they take charge of everything. Any happening inside the village, Kaya village, or anything, they are the ones to take care of that. Now, this is a map which I am showing the villages and the rural areas which were surveyed, and these are all adjoining the Kaya forest. So you can see here for Kaya Kauma, it has all these villages around, and the Kaya Solokero, down one is the Kaya Solokero. And these cases, what you have written is, what you can see here is the villages adjoining them. So majorly the villages in the radius of 5 to 7 kilometers were surveyed to all the people, to all the communities, which type of plants they use and how do they use it, which parts do they use, like all information on the plants. And now let me give you the site description of these two Kaya forests. Now what happens, any Kaya forest, it's usually on a higher altitude. So even you can see, well, the location I have mentioned here where it is found, but the geographical position will be a little higher from the sea level. So because the concept was that they used to hide on a hilltop. So they used to choose the forest which was mostly on the hilltop so that they could see their enemies coming and all earlier, when this concept started. And the reason why for me to do these two forests for my research was it has different types of vegetation. Like the Kaya Kauma, it has a deciduous, that's a dry type of pattern compared to the Kaya Solokero, which shows a little evergreen type of pattern of vegetation. So, and also like some in Kaya Kauma, Kaya village, there is none of the people are inhabiting now, but they do use the village as a shrine and they have their cultural events over there. But for Kaya Solokero, we do have people living there. So now there were 18 villages around Kaya Kauma and 9 around Solokero. So the survey was done for the rural people, the rural areas and the community. The survey was done in all these villages adjoining the forest. And you see here we used Kiswahili as a language of community. The main language over here, the local language is Kiswahili. However, like normally people understand English, but if you go to these villages and all, people, they're not that literate. So you need to have the local language of communication. But like for Kauma, they still have their own tribal language, that is Kauma, and for Solokero, that was Choni. So I had to recruit enumerators who are very fluent into this, and then to explain them how to go and get information for my research, what you want the information from them. So now, there are actually 9 distinct ethnic groups over here in the community, and they are called as this. You can read over there. I have just bold them: Giriama, Digo, Choni, Jibana, Kauma, Ribe, Rabai, Duruma, and Kambe. Now, these 9 tribes, they are called as the Mijikendas. Usually when we come here in Kenya, usually people over here, they are all Mijikendas. Now, it depends on which tribe we are going to interact with them. So basically, Kaya Kauma is for Kauma community, and Kaya Solokero is for Choni community. And what the language also is a bit different, but mostly it is they share the same dialect, which we call as Bantu dialect over here. So it's mostly 71% of their vocabulary is shared between the communities. The language is mostly the same as the tribal language, but Kiswahili gets the dominant because it is the national language here. Now here I've just mentioned here the number of respondents. To be very specific, when I went to these rural areas to deal with the community and to get the information on the food plants here. Now let us come on the results. Now focusing only on the food plants, there were 37 different types of food plants which were stated by the population and the communities of Kaya Kauma, and 54 from Kaya Solokero. Now, what has happened, even I was even rechecking, some of these plants are not even documented and people don't even know. And majorly these food plants, in the survey also, I could make out that mostly they take it as fruit and vegetables. And they also use it as a yam. They use it, and some they process and they eat. So for the Kauma and Solokero, for the fruits, it was 16 and 41. Now, there was a big difference which we saw here because Kauma, because it's a dry vegetation, so definitely more trees, they do not flourish compared to Kaya Solokero. And even further to narrow down, even for the vegetables, it was mostly 27 and 31 reported species from Kauma and Solokero. Now, you see, these vegetables, it was then, I had, because everything was documented in the local names. So I had to get it checked for the scientific name from the National Herbarium of Nairobi in Kenya.
Yes, sir. आपकी आवाज आ रही है, sir?
And now, these are the majorly some of the important major vegetables which people over here they use. And I have also mentioned their vernacular names. So actually the information I had to collect in their local, with the local names, and then to get the scientific name and then the English name. Now, majorly here, the major vegetable, most popular one I have just listed down. Then you see here for the the second one, that is Adansonia digitata, which is the muyu, or the English name is baobab. So this plant has got, every part of the plant is beneficial to the community. And it was so interesting, whether it is the leaf or the stem or the fruit, every part of this plant serves some way to the community. However, the other plants, they use it as a leafy vegetable majorly, because mostly the people, they're not that fond of spices over here. It's mostly plain food what they prefer to eat. So it's just the leafy vegetables and the families, because further for my research, I had to categorize them into the different scientific families which they belong to get the nature of the, anyways, that was another work which I had done, get the nature of the different types of plants they belong to. Now here, I am showing you the different fruits and the families. And this plant, which you see here, the picture I've just put for Adansonia digitata, one of the most popular plant over here, I think, and it has a good widespread, it's quite widespread in Africa, not only exotic to Kenya. And it has a very huge swollen trunk, and like the leaves they use, the fruits they use. So this one is a fruit which I'm just showing you the picture over here. And these fruits, they call it as mubuyus. They take out, and I think Kenya is the largest producer of baobab, even they are largest exporter of that, because they eat like that raw. Also, they do some coating, sometimes different flavorings in that, in the food, in the mabuyus they do, and they just sell it. So, and this is a very interesting, and I think this plant is also in India, but I think it's very popular over here. And even here, this Landolphia, which is, they call it as Notoria, is also a very popular fruit over here. There's one, I put a picture just to show you Muffinacea. It's an Atrocarpus family, but it's a very common fruit over here, which people love. But majorly, some of the list of the fruits, major fruits with the families, I have just listed here. Even Refugio is a very common fruit here. So um, let me just go to the next one. Now, this is some of the cereals and yams which the people over here in Kauma they use. It's the cowpeas, which is very common cereal over here. Even leucas is very common. Now coming to the yams and tubers is the Solon roots, what they use. Like Ryoga, I've written the Swahili names as well. And you can just see some of the pictures which I've just put, the common cereals and yams in Kauma. Now, similarly, this Manihot esculenta, the picture which you see, it's very common over here. And Kenya is the largest producer of cassava chips. They usually shred it off into chips and then they fry it, give flavor, and it's very common over here. So these are the major vegetables which the community, the rural people, they are dependent to, even though it is very popular over here. So these are the list of some of the vegetables which and the families which they belong to. Now coming to the fruits for Kaya Solokero, just listed down the major fruits here which the community is being benefited to, and the families to which they belong to. These are the vernacular names of the different types of fruit. And you know, every fruit is so peculiar with its own taste, and the community are so dependent because majorly it's not a processed food they eat. It is not even they don't even cook, they just prefer to eat raw. So it's majorly the leafy vegetables are majorly common to them, and these fruits are very common to them. So these are the list of major fruits and the families from Kaya Solokero, which the rural people and the community is dependent on. Now, this is the list of some of the cereals, which is very common. And you see the first one which you read here is Mbalazi or Mahazi, they say. It's a scientific name is Kajanus kajan. And that one, it's a very popular fruit and very loved fruit from the people. They usually eat with ugali. Ugali is the maize flour, actually, but it's like a processed maize flour. It's a staple food over here. So basically for them, one of the delicacies, I should say, is the ugali and the mbalazi or maazi, they say. And this yams is basically the mriga. This important one I've just listed here. Ipima batatas also they like, but mriga is majorly the yams what people like to eat over here. So this is just top 5 food plants which are flourishing inside the forest, because apart from the community survey, I also did the forest survey, and I'm just documenting the food plants over here, which is very much, which is aiding the people, which is aiding the community over there, and the percentage occurrence of each and every food plants. So you can just read out the names here. And I have some pictures which I can show you, which is very exclusive and very interesting to look into. Okay, now you see this plant, which they call it Croton pseudopulchellus. Yeah? They usually call it as Miamia vanica. That's the common name what they refer this plant. Now the stem, even if you break the stem, and you smell, it's such a nice flavor. So what they do, they usually burn a little bit. They roast the stem and put it in a bottle. The bottle gets flavored. They take out the stem and then they put the milk and then they drink. So I found it so interesting. I just thought I'll put a picture of that. Similar, like majorly very exotic floras, I see the people are getting benefited. Now the next one, what you see, this is called as Adenium globosa. The stem of this plant is so solemn. It's so unusual to watch this plant, and when they use this stem to feed the hens, so that the hens become quite fertile. This is what they are using in the village. So this one, and like I had to record them with the vernacular names. So every plant was again being tested. And then even scientifically, like when I tested it in the lab, it also produced, it was showing that yes, it has nutritive as well as medicinal
Dr.
value.
Jolie, can you summarize it?
Sorry, sir.
Can you summarize it?
Oh yes, sir. You want me
Please.
to? Okay, fine, sir. Now let me go to the to the next. There are some of the edible fruits of Kaya solocera. Distinguishing fruits from there, I'm just showing a little bit of pictures, and this is just the transition in the housing pattern. What the rural, the community over here, how they live into now. Now you can see the third picture, the way they are constructing. You see, so slowly what is happening, the culture, they are transitioning to a new way of livelihood. So slowly the culture is fading away, and that's what we are trying to document on that. So I'll just conclude that these villages and these people in the villages, they have very rich and intense knowledge. And they carry a very rich ethnobotanical culture, but the westernization is getting a big threat because the youngsters are not interested. And so we need to urgently need to preserve this knowledge. And I think this also has to be done in every part of the world, in India, everywhere, wherever we are. It's good to conserve and promote the utilization of the plants, different types of plant, food plants or other plants. Well, these are the different research papers from America and Canada and UK. They also they applauded us for our work, and these are the various research papers which has been published into international journals. You can just have a, these are the different work. So, well, and I'm very thankful to the National Museums of Kenya. In collaboration with them, I was able to accomplish this work and document the knowledge on the various strata of indigenous plants, which are used by the rural community over here. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.